Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Franchise Podcast.
I'm Kris, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Andrea.
In this podcast, we're on a mission to help you discover all that franchising has to offer.
We'll explore expert strategies, interview successful franchise owners, and give you the tools to make informed decisions.
So whether you're considering your options or you're ready to take that plunge, we're here to support you every step of the way.
So let's jump into today's episode. Hi, welcome back to another TPF podcast. Today, Andrea and I are super excited to have Rob Morrison, founder of Here Again America. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kris. Andrea, nice to be with you guys this morning.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on.
Yeah.
This is definitely a different topic, right, than most people think when they think franchises. So I'm excited to learn more about it. And so, Rob, give us sort of the background, the origin story behind Here Again America. How did it begin? What was sort of your initial vision into this?
Sure. Well, so Here Again America, I mean, first and foremost, is a hearing aid company. Many people know different brands of retail hearing aid organizations out there. Miracle Ear is probably one that jumps out. That is probably most recognizable. Here Again America, we're based in Boca Raton, Florida, and really the initial vision for the company was to find like business minds of owners, perhaps looking for exit strategies, people who are kind of reaching the retirement age who owned businesses, and consolidate them into an organization where we could build an infrastructure that enabled us to have creative and innovative marketing solutions, and kind of build economies of scale, right? Be able to lever the size of the organization with manufacturers and thereby giving us preferential pricing and those sorts of things with vendor relationships. And so we've been in existence since 2014. The first location was purchased in 2015, and we've since grown to about 34 locations in 4 states. We have the lion's share of our footprint is in the state of Florida. We also have offices in South Carolina, Georgia, and Maryland. And so in penetrating new markets, what we really looked to do ultimately was to kind of subsidize some of the seasonality we saw in Florida while building the infrastructure and building the organization to what it is today.
So let me ask you a loaded question here, or a leading question.
Sure.
The hearing aid business, it's a good business to be in right now. Why?
So it's funny, I've been in the industry, I'm a doctor of audiology by training, and have been in the industry now for over 20 years. And one of the things we were learning in school is, the baby boomers are getting older, and we've literally been waiting for that time period where the baby boomers would reach that proverbial retirement age of 65. And you see this kind of almost a mushroom cloud of needs in that population, whether it's home health care and some of the other, probably some of the other opportunities that are out there, and hearing aids being one. It's one of those, it's certainly one of those silent healthcare needs that people don't really know a whole lot about. Most people could tell you what their cholesterol levels are, or their heart rate, or give you a whole bunch of numbers that their physician gives them, but most people don't get their hearing screened. And there's a lot of research that's now starting to come out as it relates to untreated hearing loss and some of the negative impacts it can have on overall health. And there's a very interesting convergence of the technology embedded in hearing aids today, and overall health and wellness, as that relates to memory capabilities and early onset dementia that are being researched. And so I think it's probably going to be, the next 10 years will probably be the best 10 years to be in this industry. And again, I think that has to do with the convergence of technology. It's no longer grandma's hearing aid. It's really a total communication product that incorporates AI technology, fall detection systems, live-time language translation, in addition to helping people with their hearing and communicative needs. And so at the end of the day, person-to-person interaction and people's ability to engage in social situations and not withdraw is helping people live, more fulfilled, well-rounded lives, and that's really what gets us going. That's our why. That's really what we look to do, and the difference we look to make in the lives of our patients every day.
I think it's a really good point, Rob. We have a family history on our side where both my husband already has hearing aids, my mother-in-law, and then my dad is the vain person that doesn't want to do it, but he needs it. And, the things that I see where you just hit on the health piece of it, some of the depression things that I see as the result of them kind of pulling back because they can't hear people, so they don't go out anymore? Or is the memory stuff where we're like, did they just not hear me, or is it their memory going? It's like a constant sort of battle with that. And so I could see that really being beneficial as people sort of realize there's better technology coming, and hey, it's not, you don't even see them half the time. So I
Yeah.
think that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about what sets you apart from other providers in the space. So, you mentioned sort of Miracle Ear, but then, Costco's out there and they have hearing aids. So, help us understand the difference between Here Again America and those other providers.
Sure. I think that every kind of channel in the distribution model itself has their patient, their quote unquote patient. I think that what we really look to focus our energy and efforts on is the patient and being very patient centric. We're not a bait and switch organization. We don't, our marketing solutions are not that, loss leader advertiser and then come in and try to bait and switch people into, only purchasing a top end device. We really try to be very patient centric. We take our time with patients, try to make appropriate recommendations, understand the lifestyle, and try to match technology to lifestyle. And then I think on the back end is really where Here Again America makes its difference, and that is on the service component. We oftentimes talk about commoditization of, a product or of a widget, right? We happen to sell hearing aids, and we happen to have people who are very passionate about the patients that they interact with. But what you ultimately cannot commoditize is the service component and the people involved and kind of the expertise in this business. And so anybody can sell a hearing aid so long as you're licensed to do so, but it's the expertise with how that device is fit specific to the person and their needs in their lives that I think sets us apart. And so we pay a great deal of attention. We don't just have a patient walk in and give them our full attention prior to a sale, and then once we've sold a patient a set of hearing aids, forget about them. We really focus our energy on the retention component and ensuring that what they've been fit with in terms of technology is in fact improving the quality of their life, and being a part of, really being a part of their lives for the remainder of it, so that as a resource, as a healthcare resource for them. And it's funny, we oftentimes, I won't get too far off here, but oftentimes our patients are coming in, 4 or 5 times a year. We have stories every day on our internal chats about patients bringing in flowers for our providers or for our front office staff because, they engage with them, and they really care about the patient and their families. Um, and that's really what gets us going is to help people on a daily basis, reconnect them with families, live a life of connectivity rather than isolation. And so it's a very rewarding business to be in.
Rob, walk me through the journey of a customer, because I'll speak for myself. I always think if I feel like I need assistance with my hearing, I'm going to mention something to my general practitioner, or maybe I've had other ear issues, so I go to an ENT, and then they're going to refer me to the medical network's audiology department. And how do I end up at the doorstep of Hearing in America? Can I just walk in with nothing, no doctor referral, no previous testing? I just say, here I am. Like, how does it work? And talk to me.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so it's kind of yes to all of the above. So, if someone's experiencing some kind of, ear issue where they go to an ENT, then certainly it's 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 our responsibility to develop relationships with other comorbidities. And so one of the things that we do in our clinics is we reach out in our, local areas and our local network of whether it be physicians or other, again, like I said, comorbidities, and say, hey, we have a hearing clinic down the way. If there's a need for our services, there's great cross referral opportunity. But we also have, one of the reasons that location is so important is that we have walk-ins every day come into our clinics. We have, offer free hearing testing so people can come in, get a hearing test, and then we can talk more specifically just to the patient once we have that objective information. So yeah, but again, it's kind of yes to all the above, Kris. We have great referral relationships, cross referral relationships with other comorbidities. We have relationships with insurance companies who are referring in-network people to our offices. And then really the way that we've grown our business is, and probably the best compliment that we can get is the referrals of loved ones and family members of existing clients, right? So when they come in and they see the value add, or they see how we care for the patients, and they get the service and are treated with the integrity, respect, and dignity that they deserve, sending their loved ones in to get, potentially get some help is really the best compliment that we can get.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's great. So, Rob, help me understand sort of the model behind this, the service model. Is this you come in, you get your hearing aid, you get tests, you realize you need them, you get your hearing aids, and then you're done until maybe they wear out and you need another pair? Is that the typical journey? But you talked about some people coming back. So, help
Yeah.
us understand that.
Yeah, so I'll start kind of soup to nuts. From the hearing test, it's really determining candidacy. And then we talk a lot about the lifestyle. So you really want to match the technology level. It's kind of like automobiles in a way, right? There's different levels of technology, and they all come with different price points. So I think one of the take home messages is there's a price point for everybody. I think the stigma is that hearing aids they're just really expensive, but we really have to match the technology to the hearing loss, and also what the expectations of the patient are. Is it a patient who's in a lot of wind noise out on a golf course, or challenging environments like restaurants oftentimes, or is it someone who is really just looking to be able to hear their TV at home in a relative quiet environment a little bit better? So we really have to. So that's the front end. We really got to do our work on the front end to make sure that we're matching technology with the patient and their expectations. Once they're fit with the devices, which usually takes place after a hearing test, if they purchase a set of hearing aids, usually takes place within about a week. Then there's a standard trial period of 30 days where there's a money back guarantee. And we look to see that patient a couple of times to make adjustments to the prescriptive targets and fitting, because people naturally are going to come back in and say, well, this sounds a lot better, but maybe I need it turned down a little bit. Maybe it's a little too loud, or I was hoping to get a little bit of more perhaps benefit in this environment, and are there things that we can do to manipulate the settings of the devices? And then we look to see our patients at least once a quarter. And the reason for those visits once a quarter is ensuring that the devices are working up to specifications. Do a quick clean and check, as we call it, just to make sure that the maintenance of the devices is good. Usually there's about a 3-year warranty on them from the manufacturer, so there's good coverage. And then the lifespan of a set of devices, whether the technology times them out or the devices themselves just need repair and it makes more sense to invest in a new set of hearing aids, is usually in that 3 to 4 year range. So, we oftentimes will sell an extension of warranty from year 3 to 4. But at year 4, we're oftentimes talking about newer technology, and maybe there's different solutions that are appropriate for the patient. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so when they're coming in and they're getting clean, are they just coming into you regularly? Is there sort of a membership to this, or they just show up and say, "Hey, I need this done," and pay you per service?
Yeah, we try to function like a dentist does. My dentist, I can't leave there without having my 6-month appointment. And so usually
Yep.
what we'll do is we'll schedule a 3-month or 4-month appointment out for every patient when they leave. And then, when you're confirming appointments day before, maybe they say, everything's working great. Yeah, I don't need to come in. Things are wonderful. Let's set up the next appointment for the next 3 months. And that's really how we kind of keep that engagement with the patients. And we do events. We do a lot of educational seminars and those sorts of things. And we love for our existing patients to come in and not only be advocates, to others who are trying to make a decision as to whether or not hearing aids are for them, but also because then they're learning about the newer technologies that are out there, and oftentimes they'll learn something in an educational seminar that maybe they want. Like I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
hearing aids have AI technology or fall detection, or they're connected to phones, so you can get phone calls go directly through hearing aids now, or lifetime language translation. Those sorts of technologies, as they come out, many of them get interested and come back in, and that's the conversation we'll have with them on their subsequent appointment.
Right.
Rob, let's change tacks here. Now
Sure.
let's talk about the business of Hearing in America. For folks that might be interested in looking at Hearing in America as a franchise opportunity, talk to us a little bit about the business model. It's brick and mortar. How big of it? How big is it? Who are we staffing it with?
So yeah, the brick and mortar, primarily we like to find ourselves in busy retail centers. And so in Florida here, we look to Publix plazas. We look to, something that has like a good anchor store where there's visibility. And oftentimes what we'll say is, because it's a high gross margin business, right? The average ticket is $4,400 or $2,200 per unit, right, per hearing aid. So we assume a bilateral sale, and that's the average. Hearing aids range from $2,000 a set up to $7,000 a set. And so with an 800 to 1,200 square foot, brick and mortar location that's built out, we look to try to pay the rent with one walk-in per month. And so that's why location is really important and visibility is important. We want to have people who see the sandwich board out front, free hearing tests, and come in and hopefully do something about it, and justify the location itself. So to staff it is actually, that's one of, I think, one of the things that's very attractive is that, the AUV for a mature clinic is in the, $500,000 range. So you're looking at about a $500,000 AUV, per annum for a mature clinic. And you only have to staff it with two people. So you've got a licensed provider, which is either an audiologist or a hearing instrument specialist. An audiologist is they go, like myself, go to college and school for a good long time for audiology, whereas a hearing instrument specialist, they can get a state licensure, and usually it takes anywhere between 6 and 12 months to be able to acquire that. But anybody from any walk of life can get their HIS, hearing instrument specialist license. So you've got the licensed professional, and then you've got a front office staff person who's, the kind of the face of the business, welcoming patients into the clinic, making phone calls, answering the phone, making appointments, those sorts of things. But that's really kind of the structure of the business. Usually we have two offices. The build out itself is two offices, front office, waiting area, maybe a service lab. So really the footprint itself is not all that complicated for an appropriate patient flow.
Yeah. And Rob, you mentioned earlier that the offices will go out, develop referral relationships, etc. Does Hearing in America, the franchisor, the mothership, do you also support in marketing in some way? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And so one of the things I like to talk about is why franchising. Just from we talked about Hearing in America, the corporate entity, and we were, very successful in what we do. And so I oftentimes get asked the question, why did you go into franchising? And part of the reason that we did that hits on your point, Kris, and that is we could penetrate new markets and hire employees and tell them and give them, kind of give them the rundown of what we like for them to do. But oftentimes, the pen drops at 5 p.m. I mean, in an employee-employer relationship versus having franchisees penetrate their own markets or new markets where they can self-promote, and they can be the ones who are involved in the Chamber of Commerce or BNI and shake hands with other comorbidities and develop those referral relationships and actually be in the community. And that's one of the reasons that we thought franchising was a really great way to go, because we can give them the blueprint for the success that we've been able to achieve. And by the way, we've made every mistake there is to make in the book. It's just we tried to learn from all those mistakes and to help franchisees avoid them. And then as they penetrate new markets, we have our entire marketing team internally that supports each franchisee. So we have a lookbook of all the creatives. We have objective information of efficacy of different, efficacy of different ads that we have created. We've got a graphic designer in-house. We have, a marketing director and her marketing assistant, in-house, and they all support the franchisees. They build a budget, an annual marketing budget. They build an annual marketing calendar. It's up to the franchisee, of course, to pull all the strings and to make all the decisions, but we're there hand in hand, kind of working with them, collaborating with them throughout the entire process, to help them make the best informed decision and hopefully engage with the most number of patients as a result.
That's great.
Excellent.
So, Rob, who's that ideal candidate? Do they have to have an audiology background like you? Do they have to be in healthcare? Who's sort of that ideal person for you?
Sure. Well, we have, the model itself is semi-absentee, but we also have, in our kind of our first wave, if you will, of franchisees, we also have owner operators. And so it's really a good fit for either one. But what we've found, I think that the ideal candidate, and another reason that we got into franchising is we wanted to be able to collaborate with not only like-minded individuals, but people who bring a different skill set into the equation, right? People with IT backgrounds or people who have operations backgrounds, for example, who can build efficiencies into the process as well and bring new ideas. But really the ideal candidate for a Hearing in America franchise if I can tug at your heartstrings story for a little, or yeah, and give you one of them, is somebody who wants to make a difference in their community, someone who maybe wants to get out of the corporate life, and wants to build, you know, kind of build a legacy within their own market to be a healthcare resource, for patients and for the demographic that lives there and resides there. Um, you need to be a driver, right? So you've got to be someone who expects to have a challenge. Starting a business is not easy. If it was, everybody would do it. Um, we look at ourselves as a partner to our franchisees, so they certainly have someone to bounce all ideas off of and to try to draw from our experience. But at the same time, being a business owner and being a franchise owner, starting up a business, it takes a lot of work. So the ideal candidate is someone who is willing to roll up their sleeves, not afraid to get in front of people and be passionate about what they're looking to do and develop relationships and advocate for themselves in the market, be involved in the Chamber of Commerce, be involved in BNI, and speak with other business owners to increase their footprint and increase their referral opportunities.
That's great. Thanks.
Rob, are hearing aids, at least with Hearing in America, are they all just cash pay, or are there other options?
Yeah, no, there are other options. The direct paying patients, so the buckets that we look at, you've got your direct pay patients who come in, and there's a bundled model and an unbundled service model. And so usually our cash pay patients, they're in that bundled model where all service for the rest of the lifetime of the hearing aids is covered. So, the bundled model, you pay everything up front, and a patient should never have to, there's no copay to come in the office. There's no charges associated with anything unless there's actually a charge outside of warranty that comes from the manufacturer in that bundled model. We also have an unbundled model, and that's where we can reduce the price point of the devices, but then we kind of have service a la carte. So there's whether it's an annual hearing test, retest, those sorts of things. And we do that to be able to compete with some of the competition that's out there that refers patients in, the kind of a third party bucket, we call it. There's organizations that are just marketing engines that reach out to patients in the demographic, and they will refer them into our clinic. But the patients are purchasing the hearing aids from those organizations, and they're paying our clinics a service fee, right? And so, again, they've reduced the cost of the devices themselves, and so we can compete with that by unbundling the service model. So we can bring our pricing down as well, but we also have to be paid that service fee to keep the lights on and to, pay the providers, et cetera. There's also insurance, right? So insurance has gotten into the game. There's a number of insurance companies that have a benefit. And every patient, every individual who walks in, we verify their insurance. We've got a third party organization that is an option for our franchisees to utilize as well to do pre-verifications of insurance benefits. And then it's just a matter of understanding what benefits they're walking in with, whether there is a hearing aid benefit involved or not. And so we try to be very transparent with the patients and allow for them to take advantage of benefits if they have them. But also tell them the difference between, kind of an a la carte offering versus a bundled model offering.
So, Rob, kind of, to round out a lot of this questioning, help us understand, like, how is this industry changing? I hear, now they're starting to say, okay, there is going to be some insurance coverage where you used to not cover it at all. Then they're talking OTC hearing
Yep.
aids. So help us understand that dynamic a little bit and how that's going to impact the business.
Sure. I think that for the listeners, it's important to understand the different buckets. So you've kind of got your big box bucket, right? Where Costco and Sam's Club reside. And then you have your managed care and third party bucket, which is the insurance companies and the third party organizations I just alluded to. Then you have your direct channel, which is where private practice clinics are. And then really the OTC or over the counter bucket. And over the counter hearing aids have actually been around for many, many years. It's just within the last 2 to 3 years, it was formalized. And of course, the president had come out at that one point in time and started talking about OTCs flooding the market. What's interesting in how the industry has evolved is that we're increasing accessibility and affordability, which to me increases the educational component and awareness for patients to come in and do something about a hearing loss or maybe a struggle that they're having. Because as you increase affordability, people are much more likely to come into a clinic and ask about it or potentially do something about it. Um, but hearing aids have changed, and the model itself has changed drastically as a result. And so, interestingly, the demographic, as it gets older and we have more people in the demographic, the penetration rate has remained flat across the industry for 40 years. So for 40 years, 1 in 5 people who have a known hearing loss actually do something about it. And so even with the industry and the distribution channel having some threats, if you want to look at it that way, some more people coming into, kind of coming into the arena to play, um, we're actually seeing a steady increase still in the direct channel because you've got the demographic that we're servicing ballooning. And so really, the impact to us is that OTCs have kind of become like the readers were to the eyeglass industry, where someone can try an OTC perhaps for a lesser cost. And then they oftentimes will come into our clinic and say, I bought these OTCs, but then they stopped working 2 weeks later because they were packed with wax. Can you clean them out for me? Walmart's customer service counter wouldn't help me out with them where I bought them. Right. So again, you can commoditize the product, but you can't commoditize the service component. And that's, I think, a value add proposition that direct patient and, client, patient to, provider interaction is never really going to go away.
That's great. Thank you. That helps.
So, Rob, before we run out of time, we always like to end our podcast by asking our guests 2 rapid fire questions. And these questions have nothing to do with Here Again America specifically. This is just you as an experienced franchise expert giving advice to people that are on the path towards business ownership. So the first question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give somebody who's seriously considering buying a franchise and becoming a business owner?
So first piece of advice I would give is to do your due diligence. Make sure that who you're partnering with and the organization that the organization or franchisor that you're interested in is going to provide the solutions and the support that you feel you need. Everybody's got their strengths and their weaknesses. And so really look at that franchisor as a partner in what you're looking to achieve, and ask good detailed questions. Make sure that you're going in eyes wide open. Make sure that you feel that your future partner is being very transparent, and do your due diligence. Go and look and feel and see an existing franchisee who's operating. Talk to the existing franchisees and find out what their experience was like. What should your expectations be throughout the process? And because I think at the end of the day, you want to be able to make an informed decision that you're comfortable with, and you go in with appropriate expectations, not only what the long-term vision should be, but also some of the challenges you may face in the short term.
Yeah. Good advice. So
Yeah.
the second question would be, okay, now we're talking to somebody who made the leap. They bought a franchise. They're in that first year. We all know as business owners what that first year is like. It's up and down. So maybe they're at a down point. They're going, why did I do this? What's one piece of advice you give them?
So without sounding cliche, it's stay the course, right? So if you've done your due diligence on the front end, then you've got to stay the course and kind of stick to the plan that you created. You knew there were going to be, as you mentioned, Kris, some highs and lows. I had a conversation this morning with one of my franchisees. Fortunately, she's not in a lull right now, but we were just talking a little bit about goal setting and appropriate goal setting, and making sure that, as you plan, whether it's planning for expansion or whether it's planning to have a better month next month than you did this month, and how can we affect change in that arena itself, right? How can we just isolate it? Make sure that you're goal setting, and then as you achieve goals, again, you're stair stepping your way up. And again, going back to the due diligence that you did, you knew that there was going to be challenges. Just make sure that you have realistic expectations. Starting a business is not easy, and it takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of determination. It takes a lot of persistence, and it takes a lot of belief in yourself. And so I guess that would be my advice. Like, believe in yourself. Um, believe that the decision that you made was made and predicated based on a lot of due diligence and realistic expectations. And now that you find yourself kind of swimming in it, you've just got a goal set and find ways to improve, get better tomorrow than you are today, right? Kind of that old adage is better
Yeah.
tomorrow than today, better today than yesterday. So I guess that would be my advice.
That's great. Thanks, Rob, so much for coming on. Like I said, when we started this out, this is not something people probably think about as a franchise when they first come, like, oh, hearing. But I think it's one where we're seeing people, the baby boomer generation is getting older. I think it's 10,000 people turn 65 every day. That's a big population. And a lot of them are having that hearing loss. And we talked about all the medical issues that come along with that, besides just the hearing piece. And so, giving somebody this franchise and putting that out there where they can not only get the hearing aids, get the testing they need, but then the service-based part of it. I think that's really important to understand, that it's not just set it and forget it. It is sort of an adjustment, a cleaning that's needed. And I think this is definitely a franchise that's needed. So thank you so much for coming on and really talking to us about that. So if you're thinking about franchising, remember that while there's no one size fits all, the perfect franchise for you is definitely out there. To explore your options, visit theperfectfranchise.com and click on Let's Talk to schedule a call with one of the consultants on our team. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode.